Well, hello and welcome back, my friend. Man, today I'm joined by Lee Zuniss. Lee's got an amazing story. He is a man that is just persistent and resilient, and that has been built up from challenges that he faced in his childhood. And so he's looked at things differently instead of saying, like, why did this stuff happen to me? Instead, he's looking at it, how can this help me grow? What gets better from here? So he's looking at it like in an inverted way, whereas most of us would just be like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? What did I do to deserve this? Lee has a different perspective, and that's uniquely because of how he's handled it, uniquely set him up for the growth and like the success that he's experiencing and helping men through their growth and transformation as well. So Lee and I had a chance to hang out at Podcast Movement 2 months ago, I think it was.
Something like that, yeah.
Absolutely amazing time. My wife and Lee and Mark Ronick, we just had a phenomenal time. Lee's one of those guys that you can just sit and talk with, that is super encouraging, great listener, phenomenal guy. So I'm stoked to have Lee with me today. Lee, how are you doing today, my friend?
Mike, I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for asking, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely, bro. I mean,
Yeah,
the stuff you've gone through and how you've handled it and where you're at now is is something that was super encouraging me for our conversation when we were at the conference. And so I wanted to make sure that, you know, um, to be able to give this to other men, to be able to listen and find that encouragement, that hope, to be able to take on what they're facing as well.
that is my hope as well. To be able to connect with other men and just be of support however I can. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Well, let's jump in. And what does life look like for you today on the professional side of life?
Yeah, professional side of life today. I'm a certified coactive coach, which is a certain program that I've completed. It's just I don't have to go into the details necessarily, but it's just an amazing program. Gave me everything I could possibly need to be a confident and powerful coach. And I have a specialty which I've taken two courses on, which is incorporating specifically microdosing psychedelics into my coaching practice as a medicine and a tool, ultimately to loosen up. This is loosening up and kind of loosening up our conditioning.
Hmm.
Um, it helps loosen our conditioning, and it helps us. I mean, I can get into more details from a neuroscience perspective on that, but really, it helps loosen our conditioning and helps us see things a bit more clearly, the things that are not serving us, the things that are serving us too. It just what's working, what's not working, and allows us to sort of see through a lens where a focused lens on especially the things that are not working, and see them so clearly that it doesn't necessarily require willpower. It just this clarity just changes things, and changes our the way we see things and the way we take action. So um so that's where I'm at right now professionally. I'm in my home office in the mountains of Colorado, and yeah, I can very confidently say I'm I'm living the dream as far as feeling very very purposeful in my
Hmm.
life.
And that's like 180 degrees from where you were at one point. So it's like the lie that we often believe of, hey, this is who I am. You get what you get. That's all trash.
Yeah.
Um, and I just wanted to kind of jump back when you were talking about, like the microdosing.
Yes.
So it in essence is removing like blocks, right? As if we almost have blinders on, and it allows for things that would be resistant to
Mhm.
necessarily being seen, and gives us clarity onto other stuff that we may not have a full insight to, right? So stuff that's been hidden
Yeah.
kind of brings to the surface, and other stuff that it's just like la la la, I don't want to hear it. You can then like get past that kind of stuff, correct?
Right. Without judgment. It brings it to the surface, or what I also say, it shines a light on certain things that might
Mhm.
need attention in our lives, or yes, or things that are living in us, um, subconsciously.
Gotcha. No,
Yes.
that's a
So,
great
yeah.
way to go about things, man. How much do we keep hidden? So,
Yes.
um, so on the personal side of life, what does that look
Mhm.
like for you today?
So, however many years this is now, just only a few months before the pandemic, I think I remember. I think we talked about this. My wife and I, we were living in Brooklyn for many, many years. Each of us, like probably 20 years, and just by chance, well, not by chance, actually, a few months before the pandemic hit, we moved from Brooklyn, New
Mhm.
York to this tiny mountain town in Colorado. And I say not by chance because it was it was I was I was so done with New York City. I love it. Great. The way I feel about New York City right now is it's an amazing place to visit. I lived there almost my whole life, and it got to the point, and I wasn't really that aware of this until the very end, that even just thinking about it, I want to take a deep breath because there's so much stimulation there, and I was at my limit as far as what my nervous system could handle,
Mhm.
and so we ended up. It was just that was it. We were both done. We live here now with. It just so happens that my wife grew up here, and we live on a property um, bordering a state forest. So we really live in the forest, um, and with her father and her sister. So we share a house with her sister, the three of us, and her father has this little cabin that's I'm pointing that way. It's like I don't know, 100 yards that way. And so we all share this property together. And so we have a little community here. We call it the compound. Um, and and we are speaking of the nervous system, this nature, I take it in every day. It's medicine. It's absolute medicine for my nervous system. So so yeah, and it's just I'm doing my thing here. My wife and I are doing our thing. She's an artist. We're very focused, but we're also really focused on taking care of ourselves, mentally, physically, making sure we have purpose in our life and community and friends. And so I'm a very lucky guy.
And the one thing that's so funny to me is it's like you're in Colorado with the iguana that's behind you on the
Yeah.
wall, the painting. Man, I keep thinking it's like I'm going to be talking to you. You're down in Costa Rica, like, your compound has banana trees, everything else. You're not far from Lenny Kravitz, right? It's like, and I go, no, he's in Colorado. But
Yes.
I get it. I mean, it's a different energy. It's a different feel, right? The being in cities
Mhm.
will amplify that. So yeah, I mean, being in the mountains of Colorado would definitely have a different flow, or a different way to play on your nerves and your senses.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can
Yeah.
definitely see that.
Yes.
But I still keep thinking you're in Costa Rica, man. Seeing that iguana, I'm like, I'm
This
coming,
guy
Lee.
over
I'm
here.
going down there.
This guy over here.
Yep, pet the iguana.
That's the other one.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into some of the stuff you faced from your childhood.
Yes.
So, stuttering was a big thing, and I think that was from like age 6 until like mid 30s was something that it
Yeah.
was like,
I've been trying to
you were
figure out.
working to overcome.
Right. I've been trying to figure out exactly when, because it was over. This was a long process. Um,
Yeah,
but I did overcome it. But yeah, probably around age 30 or so, or yeah, something like that. Hmm.
yeah, and having worked through at 40, somebody telling me, yeah, 2 of your kids are dyslexic and so are you. Excuse me? Well, that explains a lot. So,
Yeah.
so, learning challenges definitely set you up for a different path, a different trajectory in those experiences.
Yeah.
But you also, I think it was at age 13, were then given the diagnosis of, hey, you have type 1 diabetes.
Yes.
And so you're a young kid whose body is like, hey, I'm not functioning in the way that I'm designed to, your liver going, hey, here's everything to take care of it. But then you've also got this external part where it's like, hey, I'm stuttering, and whether people are, actually seeing you differently, or it's just that thought that we can have where it's like, yeah, I'm not the same as everybody.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of those have an impact on us. How do you feel like between the stuttering and the type 1 diabetes, like how did that impact you in growing up at that
Mhm.
time?
Um, the first word, the first thing and word that's coming to mind is shame.
Hmm.
Um, at a very young age, I just did everything I possibly could to not speak. I would dread being in class. I would never ever volunteer, like raise my hand um, to speak. I was terrified. I was terrified to be called on and like try and like hide my hide underneath my hand. Everything I possibly could, which is it's exhausting. It's absolutely
Hmm.
exhausting. Um, and so it also gave me, so there was shame involved with that. There was an association of not being smart. Um, and and then fast forward to when I was 13 and I was diagnosed with diabetes. Again, there was, even though it's just my pancreas just stopped working. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything to influence that happening. But again, there was shame involved, and I would hide. I would hide it. So when I would go to school, I would do everything I possibly could to hide it. Go to the bathroom to prick my finger to check my blood sugar. And so again, I had this other thing now that I needed to hide, um, and feel shameful about. But I will tell you that those two things, and I've gotten some major clarity on this in the last few years for sure, is that they helped me. They both helped me be with my sense of awareness and my sense of self awareness, and I'll explain how. With the stuttering, back then I remember going to a speech mythologist, and she would give me exercises, and they would be mostly about intentional breath work. So always to take a deep breath before I spoke, because it was very grounding. So I practiced. I had lots of time to practice. I would practice, and I would always take a breath before I spoke. So I had this practice of connecting with my breath. So mindfulness from from a very from a very young age. It's funny. I actually just saw myself like I feel it. It still lives in me a little bit. I'm like I just saw like a little bit of a stutter, and it comes up when I get nervous.
Hmm.
I'm just bringing that. I'm just being, I'm just thinking out loud right now.
Yeah.
Just kind of letting you know where I'm at, and that I noticed that. So anyway, I had this practice of mindfulness and being in tune with my breath, and so I practiced this for many years, and then being diagnosed with diabetes, with type 1 diabetes when I was 13. Um, I had another thing to be aware of, which is my blood sugar. So pricking my finger anywhere from 6 to 10 times a day.
Hmm.
This relationship, this very close relationship with my blood sugar, and if my blood sugar was rising, how it felt in my body, and if it was, if my blood sugar was low, I would have to eat some sugar or drink some juice, and it would feel like I would feel shaky. So I had this practice of connecting and being in tune with my body. So those two things, yeah, I had I carried a lot of shame with it, but I'm realizing it also. If we're going to look at if we're not going to be a if we're going to look at what's the learning, what's the learning opportunity, and believe me, what this was pretty, only as I mentioned, only within the last, like I would say, like 5 to 10 years, that I'm realizing, wow, okay, like I'm kind of like an expert at mindfulness from these practices. Yeah.
Yeah. The things that we go through and grow from,
Go through and
we
grow from.
often, what's that?
No, I was just repeating. I was just, yeah, no, that go through and grow from. I don't know if I've ever actually
Yeah.
heard that before.
Well, I mean, it's like you you went through that experience, right? There's no way to avoid the fact that it's like I'm pricking my finger 8 times a day.
Yeah.
You know, we're hyper aware.
Mm.
Like when, like, for you it was stuttering. For me it was like, oh my God, please do not call on me to read out loud in class, because with the dyslexia, I'm like, I hope this word that I'm saying it is what it is, and my brain would just get ahead. And so it's like, wow, I skipped over 3 words. So as a child, it was like this horrifying thing. But we can either look at it as like, oh man, that sucked and I absolutely hated it,
Mm.
and so I'm never going to read out loud. Or like you were doing, you work through it. You look for those opportunities of, how can I persevere through this situation? If I'm having problems with my finances, how
Yeah.
do I go to someone who knows finances
Right.
and learn from them, instead of like, yep, I'm now 80 years old and still struggling with finances? Instead, going, hey, I'm 30 and my parents didn't teach me this and I didn't learn it in school, but I know this is a skill I need. This
Yeah.
is a hurdle that I want to get past.
Mm.
And that's what you did. And so from that, one of the skills you learned, like you talked about, was mindfulness. Dude, that mindfulness was not something that, for me, it was like, hey, I've got mindfulness 101 in college. That wasn't
No,
there.
no, that
But it's
wasn't at all.
something that what's that?
That wasn't happening when we were, yeah, we're about the same age, and no, that was not, unless
Right.
you lived in like like an ashram somewhere, or an intentional community where that was really present. No, not in my life, for
Yeah.
sure.
Now, I could have learned underwater basket weaving, but not mindfulness. you
But
know? So, I mean, it just depends on what was offered. For me, that wasn't part of the the classes that they offered, the curriculum there. But
Yes.
it's one of those, like, you've got a saying, and I'd love for you to share it. How you reframe stuff and invert it instead of like, "Hey, I'm a victim. Why did this happen?" You're looking
Yeah.
at it in a totally different way. Would you share like the phrase that you use to kind of reframe situations you encounter?
Sure, sure. It was actually I have to say this phrase was sort of given to me by a friend, um, because she noticed that I and I wasn't necessarily trying or intentionally doing this, but it was the phrase is how, and it's actually it's how can this get even better? So so what it really is, it's a practice of um, not necessarily being grateful, but it's beyond
Mhm.
being grateful as far as um, it's the intention of connecting. I'm looking up right now, like into into the universe. Like it's the intention of when I'm saying how can this get better, I'm speaking to the universe and I'm calling upon the universe to assist me,
Right.
to support me. And so even though I may feel grateful and satisfied of where I'm at a particular time, and especially if I'm not feeling grounded or grateful, it's just a practice of how can this get even. The even part is in relation to assuming that things are good, things are actually pretty damn good. But how can it get even better? So really opening up so the possibilities are endless. And then opening up, like, I don't know why this is coming to me, but just let's just say we're at a hike and we're having this beautiful hike in the mountains, and all of a sudden, and you and I look at each other and we're just like, this is amazing, like so gorgeous, like our blood's pumping, we're getting exercise, and then like, how can we just get any even better? And a bald eagle just flies by, or a moose comes by, stuff like that's a one example, but that can be applied to many different areas in life.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like you're looking not just at the situation on a high level, but you're also looking for like the details in those things. And maybe I misunderstood it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought you were also using it for like when a tough situation would come along to say, hey, how can this get even better, to almost reframe and set it in a different way rather than woe is me, or, why is this happening to me? Instead, to
Yeah,
look at it and go, how can I use it? Am I wrong, or are you using it in that way as well?
honestly, the way it was created by my friend was that she was
Yeah.
observed. I think we were feeling so grateful that, but we still wanted to. It was almost an experiment to see how good this can get.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
so yeah, honestly, it's less about looking through life through like the lens of being victimized. Um, it's less about it. I mean, the truth, it was less about that, the where that phrase came from.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a way of enhancing and increasing your gratitude for what you're experiencing, right?
Yes.
While
Yes.
it's a great hike, oh my gosh, there was the bald eagle, there was a bear. Fortunately, the bear didn't come after us, but oh my gosh, we got to see a bear.
Right. Yes.
I don't
Yes.
want to be a track star, so
Yeah.
let's let the bear be on the other side of the river. But it's super
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I get you. Well, and so you went through those things.
Hmm.
How did you then, as you know, you're growing up, you're getting into your 20s and your 30s.
Hmm.
How did those, now that you can reflect back on your past, what you've gone through, how do you see that the shame and like not feeling like you're smart enough, that you know, there's that anger, that anxiety, how did that stuff play out in your adulthood, kind of impacting your day to day and the path that you're on?
Yeah, it kept me in a very status quo, like safe, quote unquote, safe place. Um, there were times where I would test myself to see I was capable of, but honestly, there was so much anxiety that it almost. I'm thinking of a particular time where a guy who had a stutter and um, and I guess the type 1 diabetes has had less to do with this, but I've always had this curiosity and passion about for acting. So mostly in my 20s and early 30s, and this is very interesting with acting, because I was memorizing the lines, I never stuttered.
Really?
Yes. So it was
So is
all
it the
about,
line memorization that was kind of different
because I knew
in,
what I was
rather
going to
than
say.
thinking the response up?
Yes. So there wasn't anything, I didn't have to
Huh.
think. All I had to do was remember the lines. So I already knew what I was going to say. So I didn't and now that we're talking about this, maybe that was part of a level of, because I was really surprised. I thought, all right, I'm going to do this. I have so much anxiety, but I still, like the obstacle is the way. I I
Right.
I walked into the fire or whatever, and for many, public speaking or getting on stage it's like one of the big things that people get anxious about. And here I am sort of walking into the fire with it, and I'm realizing, oh my God, like it's not like I did an experiment without knowing I was doing an experiment. And but the problem was, I also there was so much, regardless of whether, and just remembering my lines and just this anxiety. So it almost wasn't worth it. I loved it so much, but the anxiety almost just didn't make it worth it. So I think I started to, like, there's a quote that I learned about a year ago, and it's, a ship in a harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for.
Right.
And so I felt like I was living my life in the harbor, and I was part of, I worked with my family. We had a family business, and so I was in this sort of safe bubble. Um, and I think the fear kept me in the safe place where I think I was bored,
Hmm.
and I did not feel connected with purpose whatsoever. I don't even think I knew what that meant, you know? So, to answer your question, I lived, yeah, it was just, it was really, I was carrying around this anxiety and fear and shame. And, it still played out as far as me feeling, I mean, well into my 20s and 30s, not feeling comfortable just speaking in groups, or oh, forget it. Like when I was in a networking group or some kind of thing where you're all in a circle and you're, hi, my name is Lee. And I freaking terrified, like so terrified for those kinds of things. But there was a certain point where I think I just started, I continued to walk into the fire or like, you know, take this leg and move it forward and take this leg and move it forward, like literally take my hand and move the legs forward. So I'm walking, or I'm diving off the diving board or whatever the metaphor might be. And I think over a period of 20 some odd years, I started to gain confidence. I just started to gain, but look how long it took.
Yeah, but the other option is what? Continue on that same path.
Well, that's
I
a,
mean, you
well,
took the
that's
harder route.
yes. Yeah. And I will say, my ex-wife, we were together for 12 years, and she was amazing as far as her support and serving as a mirror for me to let me see that the stutter, the type 1 diabetes, it was almost like she served as a mirror for me to see that I don't necessarily have to feel shame. Other people are not necessarily thinking what I'm thinking. So I just want, yeah, she played a major role in that, and she really opened up my eyes to loving myself and to giving myself a break, and that actually very much contributed to my higher level of awareness and my relation to how much shame I was carrying around with me.
Hmm. So it's almost like sounds like you learned grace and love for yourself, and like that was the stepping into um, your mindfulness and how to grow from there, instead of, so often we'll hear people say, who I am is who I am. These challenges or these struggles that I've gone through, they
Mhm.
define me and they limit me for life,
No,
which nothing can be further from the truth. It's
I
that belief that, hey, I'm going to be held at this level.
yes,
But like you made that decision, Lee, hey, I'm going to handle this differently. You know, is it easy? Absolutely not. Is it comfortable? No way in the world.
hell no.
But you're now living out a different life than where you were before. I mean, you said, I didn't feel like I was smart enough. I felt shame. I was angry. All these negative things, right? You're suffering with anxiety that, keeps you from stepping into the things that you're passionate about, right? We
Yes,
play small in those times.
yeah,
Um, as you've done that hard work and
yeah.
you've stepped into those uncomfortable places, how have you seen, those things fade away and be replaced with what you have now? Like what opportunities have opened up because you did say, no, I'm not going to stay where I'm at. I'm not going to continue to believe this. I'm going to choose to see myself differently. What have you seen open up for you from that?
So from taking those steps, even though they were fearful, and putting myself into situations that I know was just going to amplify my anxiety, but I just my innermost authentic self just that knew that I don't know how else to say it, but that this is the way. And when I say the way to grow, the way to growth. And I guess I was ultimately, now that I'm looking back, my one of my greatest values in life is just feeling peace. just feeling inner peace, which is the opposite of anxiety and stress and shame and all that stuff. So once I started to prove myself wrong that I was in to prove myself wrong that I was not that I was smart, right? Even though I had this conditioning and this story that I wasn't, once I started putting myself into situations and taking acting classes, doing things that are a little bit more creative, um, certain things like that, I proved myself wrong. Meaning, I was started to build my level of confidence, and like I was actually surprising myself. And then, lo and behold, as that started happening, the stuttering just started to fade. And along with the stuttering, the obsessive thinking about am I stupid? Do I sound like, am I going to stutter? It just started to get more quiet. So I would say, like, throwing myself into those situations, and also along with, I was a believer in therapy, and I started also realizing at a certain age, when I start feeling alone with something and it starts really weighing me down, that is an indication that I need to that I need support. That I need to at least just call someone and say, I don't even need you to say anything. I just need you to know that I'm going through this right now. So, not being alone, it sounds so simple, but not being alone with something is can be so freeing. Yeah.
So, how did you go about creating relationships around you to be able to make that kind of a call? Because when you're in that place,
Yeah.
it's not like the easiest thing to do. There's still those doubts, those beliefs that it's like, I don't want to bother whomever you're going to call. I can, you'll be like, buck up, you can get through
Right.
this without making that call.
Mhm.
How did you build the relationships around you to be able to make those calls to say, hey, I just need an ear to have somebody know that I'm in this place?
Well, honestly, I didn't know what else to do, because it felt what I was feeling was it felt so heavy.
Mm-hmm.
um, that also, I'm just remembering the heaviness translated into not only anxiety but depression in the form of feeling paralyzed. And I'm going to say most of the action that I took was, I mean, I did very intentionally select a therapist that actually we were right around the same age, and he was actually, he's type 1 diabetic also, and that was his specialty, and he was diagnosed when he was 8 years old. So I very selectively chose him as my therapist. So I would say, like, I chose people that I felt like could relate to me. Um, and then I think I always just had this feeling like, if I don't do something, I don't want to see how deep this can go. I don't want to see how deep this spirals down into an abyss. I don't want to see the bottom. of the abyss. If there even, I don't even know if there isn't a bottom of an abyss. I think that's the point, that there's no bottom. But I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to explore that anymore. So I felt kind of desperate, and then I honored that desperation. So the word honor has really, the word like honoring our core values, honoring what's happening, honoring a feeling, honoring, allowing, honoring, accepting, surrendering, all of that sort of, it just made sense to me. And I trusted it. I trusted that I needed support because I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do. So whoever's listening, that when you're at a place, I would, from, what I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say anything for anyone for what they should do, but I can express what I did was that I got to a desperate place and I did not know what else to do. And I trusted the, the structure of therapy, and also people in my life that I trusted to, that had a certain level of emotional intelligence, that I knew that would be able to listen to me without necessarily trying to show up to fix anything. I just needed to be listened to so I wasn't alone with it. That was the first step.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious because
Yeah.
for me, this was
Yes.
something I didn't realize in the midst of it, Lee.
Hmm.
But like, if I was facing a challenge, right, just like we've talked about, you going, "Hey, I'm stuttering. I want to get up on stage, but here's X, Y, and Z that
Mhm.
um, are reasons why I shouldn't." Right? They're fears that I have. I don't know about you, Lee, but I built those fears up from what would have been like a lean-to at a camp or a tent into like, the Empire State Building. They became
Yes.
larger than life,
Yes.
which became the wall that kept me to play small.
Yes.
Um, and as I did stuff, I found out they weren't. It was just like, we'll see in the cartoons, a light against a mouse, but the mouse looks
Right.
gigantic.
Yes.
Um,
Uh-huh.
okay, so did you find that things that you thought about, those fears that you had, were larger than life, but when you took action, they were actually manageable and much less than you anticipated? Was that something you found as well?
Quite honestly, not really. I mean, they were pretty, I mean, I have to say that there was a reason why like when I said that it almost wasn't worth it, like I was hovering around this place, especially with acting, where le- leading up, rehearsals, learning my lines, all that stuff, it really never, it was always stressful, but I wanted it so much. And this is another thing. And so I wanted it so much that I did it anyway. And yeah, that required bravery and courage on my end, literally, to like, we all have the fire, that we all have it. We all have the fire that we are afraid to step into. Um, but I didn't, and this is another common theme that it really has stuck with me, is that I did not want to have any regrets. I don't want to look very often some, and yeah, maybe this is a little bit based in fear, but I look back, I imagine myself, whatever I'm on my deathbed, right? And looking back, and I don't want to have any regrets. So I still, to this day, um, COVID threw a little bit of a monkey wrench into my acting career, and also not being in New York City or in LA is, makes it a little bit harder, but this is still living in me that I do not want to have, I want to experience and like give it my all as far as getting up on stage and just having that experience, because there's just something burning inside me. I feel it. I know it. It's this, it's this no, you said earlier, you used the word that there's you alluded or used the words like a knowing, like you knew. I know.
Mm.
And when we know, that is that is usually a sign that we are connected to our self. And when I say our self, I mean when our conditioning is quiet. That's, I believe that our most authentic self, our most true self, our inner leader, whatever the opposite of the saboteur is, the inner leader, that it's always present. It's just being weighed down by our conditioning and, as you said, our limiting beliefs and our stories and our conditioning. Yeah.
Yeah. And once we let those go by the wayside, it's almost like have nitrous oxide, or you got rid of a lot of stuff. You're not driving a moving van. Now you're in a Maserati or something, it
Peace.
changes the way you get to play on stuff.
And also what for me is there is
Mhm.
peace and freedom and confidence and love and clarity. I know that I'm operating from my most authentic, powerful self, my inner leader, when all of those things that I just mentioned are present. Confidence, clarity, love. Yeah,
Yeah. And there's peace about it.
peace.
You don't have that uneasiness, that feeling of anxiety like you had gone through before.
Right.
Um, Dude, Lee, there is so much to unpack around all
Ah,
this because of the change that's gone on. And yeah, and if it's one of those that you're still stuck with beliefs
mm-hmm.
that, hey, I can't change, dude, I feel like you're almost like, the poster man, right? Where it's like, no, you don't have to be where you were. The things that limited you are only limiting as long as you accept them and buy into them, and
Right.
you're the one that gets to vote on this. So,
Yes, we no, I we when you and when we say we are the one that gets the vote on it, it's ourself, our that inner leader. That's who gets to vote on it. Yeah.
yeah, 100%,
Yes.
100%, man. Well, Lee, how can men get in touch with you outside of the podcast here today?
Yeah. Well, my website is an easy way. LeeZunissCoaching.com. LeeZunissCoaching.com. And I would say that's the easiest way. There's a form on there to reach out to me, and there's also a scheduling platform to schedule a free consultation. I give a free consultation to anyone who's interested and wants to have a little space to share what's going on. And yeah, I'll do any part of my mission is to do everything in my power to support anyone that wants to feel and connect with our self. And there are many ways to do it.
Well, Lee, man, I appreciate that. It is super generous of you to put that offer out there.
Of course.
And, you know, it's oftentimes that first step that is the hardest to make. So thank you for putting that offer out there to like see, hey, what can Lee help to, provide insight into of what I'm experiencing and bringing about change.
Hmm.
Dude, thank you again, Lee, for sharing like the experiences you've gone through, how we can transition. And again, like we talked about, we're the ones that get to make that decision. So thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Oh my God. It is my honor and my pleasure to be. Yeah, listen, we could have I could go on for hours talking to you.
I know that's where I was like, Lee, we have just scratched the surface, man.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
well, Lee, I appreciate it. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you very much.
Likewise, buddy.